sure, grab some snacks, grab a cup of coffee, tell your friends, share on your Facebook page. From all of our Facebook pages, you can share to your people. So you just go down and you click share, and then it will say host a party, and all your Facebook people will join. We are so glad. We're just going to wait a moment or two until we have the thumbs up from all of the technical people, which would be none of us right now.
Yeah,
you got that right.
Oh,
we've just gone from the porch to the Brady Bunch right now.
There
we are.
The Brady porch. Sandy needs to hold on. Okay, I think we are good. And may I officially welcome everyone to tonight. My name is Sandi Patty, and it is my absolute joy. It is my absolute honor, and a little bit of feeling like I'm stepping into holy ground tonight. We are going to celebrate the incredible life of our friend and our sister, Luci Swindoll. We adore this woman. Many of you know, but just in case you don't, last week, Luci Swindoll moved to heaven. And while we grieve here on this earth, and oh, how we wish we could all be together in the same space right now, we wanted to virtually get together and for the next hour, share some stories, share some laughs, because if you know Luci, you know she loved to laugh. And as we talked about it this week and we began to share texts with one another, our buckets became so full. My grandson says, "Nani, my bucket is so full of joy." And so that is how I have felt this week, knowing that we are going to talk about the beautiful life and we are going to celebrate Luci Swindoll today. I want to tell you that in whatever platform you're watching on, please include your comments. We want to hear your stories. We may not get to them tonight, but we want to know, over the 20 years, I know there are so many great stories about our dear friend, Luci Swindoll. So here we are, safe together, even though we're apart. And it is my privilege to welcome the original Porch Ladies. And ladies, if you'd just give a wave and a quick hi to everyone. And it's my privilege to sort of begin this by asking you all some different questions and celebrate Luci Swindoll today. Patsy Claremont is in the house. Hi, Patsy. And
Hi,
Thelma
Sandy.
Wells is in the house. Hi, Thelma. Sheila Walsh is in the house. Hi, Sheila.
Hey.
Nicole Johnson is here with us. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, everybody.
And Marilyn Meberg is here with us. And this just feels like a family reunion, minus one person. And the early days of the Porch Pals and being together, man, oh man, Luci, Patsy, and Thelma, you guys go back to the very beginning of those conferences. And so, Patsy, I want to just start with you and tell us some of the earliest memories that you have, especially about the conferences, but of course, especially about Luci.
Well, I remember how surprised we all were that it was so popular right off the bat.
Yeah.
We were in churches. We had not anticipated moving on to anything larger. We were in some of the biggest churches around and couldn't hold everybody. We had side rooms and people complaining. So we ended up in an arena, and I remember us standing in a little semicircle looking around at this vast arena. And when we looked back at each other, we were all crying because we could not believe God would entrust us with this kind of space.
Wow.
Or that we would know what to do once we got up there. And so it was very exciting. I actually met Luci inside the pages of her book, Wide is My World, Narrow is My Bed. And in that book, she talked about how to be introduced to great literature and great music and great adventures. And I remember writing them down on a piece of paper, suggestions of how to build a library and how to build a music package for yourself. And I went to the store and bought everything on the list as an introduction to upgrade my music. So, and also my literature input. So that was very exciting to actually get to work with Luci, and it was more fun than I could have imagined and extremely inspiring again and again for audiences when they heard her, because she had this charisma and this natural impact on people that drew them in, and everybody knew they were going to be her best friend. They didn't know she already had one in Marilyn Meberg. They thought they were going to be her best friend. And Luci was a celebration waiting to happen. But when you mixed her and Marilyn together, you knew it was time for a party, because they had sparks that set each other off. And so it was always a thrill up there when the two of them would end up on the mics, because you never knew what was going to come forth from either one of them. And it was great fun.
Oh, Patsy, that is awesome. And I'm just reminded, before I want to get to Thelma, that for a long time, I thought Luci Swindoll was Chuck Swindoll's wife.
Everybody thought that.
I did not realize until later that Luci is the older sister of Chuck Swindoll. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up as we were beginning our gathering, so everybody had some context. Thelma, tell us about some of those early years, and especially some memories of Luci.
Well, I'd be glad to, because Luci was the first person I met when I went to Women of Faith. In fact, she was in her room dressing, and she saw me walking down the corridor of the hotel, and she said, "Hey, hey, are you Thelma Wells?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, come on in here, honey. Come on, come on in here." And we talked and we talked, and I'm thinking, who is this lady? I don't even know her.
I don't even
How
know.
does she know me? And why is she calling me into her room with her dressing? Okay. And then she said to me, "We are so glad to have you.
No.
I want you to know that we're so glad to have you." And that was what I needed to hear at that moment, because I had gone in a different seminar thing. And for her to say what she said, we are glad you're here. We love you already. Ooh. And and other sweet, kind things that she said to me, and she had never met me.
Love that.
Yes. And that stayed in my heart and has stayed in my heart all the time, because she didn't have to call me into her room. She didn't have to talk to me like she had known me for years. She didn't have to welcome me as she did, but she did.
She did.
And that's one of the reasons I started loving Women of Faith, okay? Or where we where we started the Porch Pals, okay? Because I saw all the love, not only in Luci, but I saw the love in all of the ones who were on the porch.
Yes.
And I just, thank God. and
Amen.
said, I'm home, Jesus.
Right.
I'm home.
I love that, Thelma. Thank you for that. That you just shared the essence of Lucy right there. Marilyn Meberg, there's a lot of stories that you can share, that you and Lucy shared together, Lucy's stories, but there's one particular story that I have in mind, and I'm trying not to give it away, but it has to do with a car and the side of the road. Could you please tell that story?
I would love to tell that story. I had not known Lucy very long, but I met her at her brother's house at Christmas, and she moved out a few months after that, she and her dad, and we just became instant friends, but I didn't know her well. And I said somewhat hesitantly when we were over at Chuck and Cynthia's and her dad and Lucy were there, I said, Lucy, I've got a speaking engagement in LA tomorrow. And I don't know if you've ever seen LA before, but if you would feel like it, would you like to go along with me? And she said, sure. I thought, wow, she didn't even hesitate. Okay, so we get in the car and we're going down the 5 in California. And she said, you know, Marilyn, I don't understand Californians. In Texas, our freeways are so clean and tidy. You've got furniture by the side of the road. You've got shoes in the middle of the road. There's and all that. What are people doing? Do they take their junk out and just toss it out the window? I hadn't noticed that. And I felt kind of defensive about that. And I said, well, honey, we're always in a hurry. Well, let that go. We got into LA. I did my deal. We're driving back, talking nonstop. But I see off to the side of the road, a couch. By the side of the road, someone had thrown it off, and I didn't say anything. I just slowed the car down and got off on the edge and drove toward the couch, said nothing. She said nothing, stopped the car. I got out, she got out. We walked over to the couch, and it was as if nothing had been said in between. We talked and talked and talked, and people are going along going, what? We didn't even make reference to that. And then quietly we got up, got back in the car, and took off down the freeway. Who would do that except Luci Swindoll? And it was so
and Marilyn Meberg. And Marilyn Meberg. Oh,
it was a fun
Marilyn,
time.
did you guys ever talk about it later?
Oh, of course. Well, when we got back in the car,
okay,
we laughed and laughed and laughed, but that was after it was over. See, I didn't know her very well. I had no idea how she would be. I've always been nuts. I married a man who was nuts. We used to do nutty things, but Lucy, and she was nutty, as is her brother Chuck. So I shouldn't have been surprised.
That's such a memorable story. Thank you for sharing that one. Sheila, one of the classic Lucy stories. She loved to tell on her little brother, Chuck Swindoll, the very Reverend Chuck Swindoll. Can you tell us the story she loved to tell?
I will do my best, but let me just say, I will not do justice to it the way that Lucy did. But she tells the story of Chuck rolling up a cigarette for her. I mean, it was some kind of big leaf, and he told Lucy to put it in her mouth, and then he basically set fire to the end of it. And as Lucy said, it just went whoosh, and
I can just see her going.
And so they go in for, no, was it Chuck that smoked the cigarette, or was it Lucy?
Lucy.
Yeah. Lucy taught Chuck how to smoke. Yeah.
Right. I knew I'd get it wrong.
She was the older sister leading the younger brother astray.
Exactly.
Which reminds me, I remember when we were on a cruise with Women of Faith, and our son Christian, who adored Lucy, was on the cruise, and he asked one night, Mom, could I go sit at Lucy's table? And I said, well, darling, you need to ask permission if Lucy's happy for you to sit at her table. So he went over and asked Lucy, and Lucy agreed. And so he sat down there, and then I look over, and Lucy is now teaching my son to smoke with a breadstick. I still have the photographs. It was just a beautiful, beautiful moment. Right. But, you know, every boy should have a Lucy in his life when they're growing up.
Yes.
And the thing that was, when I called Christian the other day to tell him that Lucy was now home, my 23-year-old son in grad school wept. And he said, I feel like I've lost a grandparent because we had no grandparents left in this country. And so Lucy would go to Christian's school for Grandparents' Day. So she is pretty special to our family.
Very, very special. Thank you, Sheila. Nicole, you not only shared the vagabond traveling with weekend after weekend with Lucy, but you and Lucy and others really were a band of adventurers outside. And share with us a little bit about that, will you?
You've already mentioned several have. Lucy loved to travel, and she had such an adventurous spirit about her. And I will never forget, we were planning to do something together, Mary, Lucy and I, over the holidays. And out of nowhere, Lucy says, hey, Nikki, want to go to Antarctica? And I said, Lucy, I've never been to Paris. I could think of other places closer that we could go together. And she explained, and warmer and easier to get to. I mean, let's start small. But this was her 7th continent, and she wanted to step foot on it. And who was I to say no? I was along for the ride, and it was absolutely amazing. But we had lots of adventures, really all over the globe. And one funny story I will never forget is being in the Louvre. We did end up going to Paris, which was great. I remember being in the Louvre, and we're talking about the conference that we were all a part of and how broad the impact was. And a woman stops at the table in the cafe at the Louvre, and she says, are you Luci Swindoll?
Oh my.
And we just all were like, well, there you go. I mean, wherever you go, there she is. Everybody knows her. It was just so Lucy, because she was just herself. All, Antarctica to Paris to the stage at the conference. She was just Lucy and full of adventure.
Absolutely. And I love that so much. And I just kind of want to point out that was before the internet and Facebook and all that. So that person who stopped Lucy, I'm guessing, had to have been at a conference.
Right.
That is just astounding. I really love that. So, we all have thrown out this week, as we've been texting each other, are some Lucy-isms. There's no way other to say that. Lucy-isms. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about some of your favorite Lucy-isms. I'm going to start with one of mine because, Lucy she was so okay with who she was. But every once in a while, her doctor would say, you know what, for your knee, you might want to drop a couple pounds. So I remember when she came to the conference the following weekend, and she was telling a story from stage. She said, I did this diet for a day, and I weighed myself the next day, and I'd lost 2 pounds. And I said to myself in the mirror, girl, you look good. and that's one of my she just kind of did that. I look good. That is so Lucy. She just embraced all of who she is and modeled for us. And that's one. Freedom. So I'm going to open it up. Let's try not to talk over each other. But are there any Lucy-isms that come to your all's mind?
I remember I came back from the book table, and someone had said something to me, and that an attendee, and it was kind of confusing, and I didn't know if they meant it as a compliment or an insult. So I told Lucy, Lucy, what do you think about this? And she said, honey, take everything as a compliment. And if I heard that once, I heard it 1,000 times in the years to come.
She really meant that. And she did, and she had so much less worry because she did everything as a compliment. Anybody
Yeah.
else? I'll just open it up. Anyone else? Sheila.
One of my favorite things about Lucy, and this isn't so much a Lucyism, but it was just great fun that she and I would have on the road. She would come up with a word and she would say, I had to somehow inject it into a conversation and not tell anybody. And I remember we were in, I can't remember which city, but we were on a early morning talk show and we were talking about the conference that night. And Lucy said
Dallas.
to me, it was Dallas? Okay.
Yep.
And Lucy said to me, you have to work the word ferret into your talk. And I'm like,
are you talking about like the animal, ferret?
yeah, the wee animal, yes. So I'm thinking, okay, Lord, you need to help me here. So the person who was interviewing me said to me, so how do you choose the cities for your conferences? And I said, oh, we just kind of ferret around. I love that about her. She would do that all the time.
And
Did
then
she laugh when you heard you do that?
Oh yeah, she was so happy.
Yeah.
That is a good one. Anybody else? Marilyn, do you have one?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I had these beautiful pansies that were being eaten by rabbits. And I was getting my hair done and I was complaining about the rabbits that were consuming my flowers. And this woman said to me, she said, well, you have very white hair. I'll tell you that rabbits hate that. Take the hair that is on the floor and any other hair of yours, sprinkle it over your flowers and they will not come back. I said, really? So I gathered up all my hair and others too. I had a little brown, little black. I had it in this baggie. So I'm out in the front and I'm throwing the hair out on my plants and I hear a car come up behind me, but I don't pay attention. I'm intent on this hair bit and I'm giving it out throughout the whole garden area. And finally, Lucy hollers from her car, what in the hell are you doing? I said, well, I hear rabbits
You're just
hate
quoting
humans.
Lucy at this point.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah. That would not be anything that would come out of my mouth. And so she said, you are putting your hair on all the plants. And I said, they hate it. And that was the end of that.
Oh,
Never
awesome.
saw it. But here's the interesting thing. I didn't get rid of the rabbits.
Oh,
But I did see a few rabbits hopping around with hair on their backs that didn't belong to them.
your hair.
Nicole,
Yeah.
do you have something? Do you have a funny Lucy?
You know, it's funny because there was one thing I remember saying to Lucy early on when we met that just cracked her up. And then she kept saying it from there on. So it just became hers in a way. It was a Looney Tunes thing. And there was this, do you guys remember this? There was this guy he's entering this like temple and it says, the voice says, enter, O ye seeker of wisdom and knowledge. And then the other voice comes over the speaker when the guy doesn't move. That's you, fathead. And so Lucy would always say to me over something, that's you, fathead.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I love that one. Thelma, I want to give you a chance to jump in here too.
Well, Lucy would always try to teach me some things. And one was about money. And she would tell me, get some money, save some money, give some money away, and all of that. Evidently, I didn't take that at heart because I'm not doing any of that she told me to do. Yes, I remember what she said.
Yeah.
And
You remember the words, but not how to do it.
I mean, that's right. Absolutely. And especially since I had children that I had to do stuff for. Okay, but it's okay.
I know. But can you all, let's just do the Lucy. When she says, you will always have money if you save some, spend some, give some away, tithe some,
That's
invest
right.
some.
That's right. She sure did.
All those things. I can just picture her doing that. And you know what? She always had money and she gave. Oh, she gave and was so generous with that.
Most generous person I ever knew. Truly
and
was.
That is true when you think about how she felt about World Vision.
Yes.
World Vision was a huge part of Luci's life, whether she was traveling, how many children she ended up sponsoring. Sheila, would you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you went on some trips with her.
The thing about Luci was she just couldn't say no. When she saw a need, she didn't even see it as a need. She saw it as an opportunity. I mean, she would get really invested in the life of these children. I mean, she just had eyes to see people. And she always was willing to be the answer to her own prayers, which I just think is amazing.
That's a great, that's
You
a
know,
great
sometimes
word.
we see needs, but she would be, I mean, she would pray for it. She would, and the fact that she would be up for every trip, no matter where it was, I mean, she just threw herself in. Do you remember the one trip where we all had to get weighed before we got on the flight?
Yes, that was in Africa.
Yes,
I've
it was.
I still haven't recovered from that. It was a small Mission Aviation Fellowship plane. And they had to weigh us all before we got on the plane. And Luci was the first up. She's like, come on.
So who all went on that trip? I was not in the Porch family. So Patsy, you went on that trip. Sheila, Luci, Marilyn, Thelma, Nicole did not. Wow. Yeah.
Great times. Great times.
Marilyn has done a lot of counseling for the Porch Pals over that, I think. You know,
a richer woman for it.
Patsy, would you just, I'm putting you on the spot here, but I think there's nothing, just simply state one of the things that people have probably asked all of us, what can we do for Luci in her memory? And maybe just speak to how they can step up with World Vision.
Were you doing that, Sheila, or am I? Because her heart was so big, and her way of giving often was to invest in children. And she had so many of the World Vision children. She could have had her own village named after her. She would say, I'm not taking another child before the trip. And then she would get there and she'd say, I'll take that one and that one and that one. And she'd be weeping the whole time she was saying it. So her heart was tender. I can't think of anything that would be sweeter or more honoring is if we went over and we were selecting a child in her honor. World Vision is over there doing their thing, and and their thing was Luci's thing. So it makes sense, doesn't it? That instead of planting a tree, plant a child.
There's
World Vision will help you.
Anybody else want to jump in on this? Let me quickly give the World Vision website. It's worldvision.org, and we'll put it up here on the screen here in just a minute. Not any of us, trust me. Our people will put that up on the screen in just a minute. But does anyone know how many children Luci sponsored? Anyone know that number?
I thought it was 13.
I would say lots and lots and lots.
Yeah. I was thinking it was between 10 and 13. And that's about, I mean.
But then remember, she also had a family because we all did the family sponsorship one year. So it was like 13 plus another family of 10 or some amazing, amazing thing. Yeah. Of all of us, she had them.
I am.
She did.
I don't have an earpiece, but my producers tell me it was over 20 that she's
wow.
Yeah. So, which does not surprise me at all. And that kind of works out to one child a year that she was with Women of Faith conferences.
Wow.
So that's
just, you know, she said that because I chose not to be married, the result was, of course, I can't have children. But this is a perfect way to have children. You don't have to have sex and you don't have to have a husband. You can have all these kids all over the world. It's the best way to do it.
That is fantastic, and I'm sure she said it exactly like that because just said it like it is.
Yeah.
When it came to loving big, she said it like it is. Thelma, would you like to share something?
Yes. When my girls started dancing with Women of Faith, she was the first one to welcome them, also to encourage them, to love on them and to compliment them, even if they made a mistake. And I don't think they ever did, of course.
No, they didn't.
No, of course. But she always congratulated them, said something great to them. And that is what a mother wants to know, wants to hear.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
kids being encouraged. They were scared to death when they first did it. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
when they
of
first,
course.
yeah, they were.
Yes.
But Lucy was the power, if you will, behind whatever they did. And that meant so much to me. And one of them is here right now.
I know. We all need our kids to help us do this tech thing right now. Nicole, I want to ask you, and I'm going to make a statement, but follow up with something that I would like for you to speak to. One of the things that Lucy modeled was giving specific compliments. Like I just been thinking about her so much, and she wouldn't just say great job. She would say, I really loved when.
That's right. That's right.
I saw her pull you aside so often after your dramas. And so just speak to that a little bit.
Well, that's a great observation, Sandy, because it's so, Lucy, in her generosity, there was always specificity, whatever that word is. And she would, as you said, she would give a compliment, but not just, there was never a broad stroke. She would always break something down and tell you exactly what she liked about it. And maybe even the one or two things that she didn't like about it, but all the while telling you what a great thing it was, because that's sort of how she saw things, whether it's music or art or writing. There were just moments that she was on the porch where she would just be enraptured by something that was happening. And she would always make a point to pull the performer or the speaker afterward and say, not just, hey, great job, like you said, but that note, Sandy, that you hit, that note, oh my gosh, that note. Or she would say, Nikki, that line in the drum, it gets me every time.
Yes.
And it does, it simply made you feel like she really meant it, because it was so specific and personal.
Yeah.
Very much so. There was a time when Women of Faith began, and all of you, including Lucy, lived in the same state, and 95% of you lived in the same city and
commune.
And what was, so in my mind, I'm thinking, here are these people who go off to work together every weekend and then come home and be together. I think maybe like everyone else, I just picture a conference happened at each person's house like every day, but that's probably not realistic. But what was that like, being work partners, but also being everyday life people? And I don't care who starts.
I would like to say, as an only child, and then as a widow for 30 years, I love the commonality and the genuinity of this group. We all just genuinely loved each other and genuinely had fun together and laughed. I mean, it was not a fake. When we'd be on stage and doing anecdotes back and forth that had to do with each other, it was the real deal. So sometimes, in answer to your question, when we would get home to our respective places, we'd get together that same night and just sort of go over, well, what did you think about? Did I blow this line? Yeah. Oh my gosh, you were good then, and so on and so on. It was a continuation of the porch.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. It was this commune that kind of existed. And which leads me to, Sheila, I want you to talk about, you touched on it a little bit, but the role that personally Lucy played in your life. And I don't want to give all the answers in my question. So, you know what I'm talking about in terms
Yes, I do.
Yeah. She stepped up as another member of your family.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I know the other ladies did too, but.
Yeah. Oh gosh. So before I do that, can I just tell this one story that
Oh, please.
just absolutely cracked me up. Do you remember the New Year's Eve when it was about to turn into a new, 2000, what was it, 20,
Yeah,
0, and we
yeah.
all thought the world was going to collapse. And so everybody at that point, we were living in Nashville. And so Marilyn and Lucy and Patsy, weren't you there too?
No,
Flew in. No,
no, I was
okay.
in Michigan.
Oh, that's right, you were in Michigan. But the rest flew in, and we were just going to have a fun evening on, just celebrating. And then if the world ended, at least we'd all be together.
Yeah.
Then Steve Arterburn, who was the original founder of Women of Faith, I did this thing with him where I said, Steve, will you call the house at like 11:30? And I'm going to pretend you're from a radio station, and I'm going to put Lucy on, and I want you to tell her she's won this fantastic prize, but she has to bark like a dog. And sure enough, like 11:30, Steve calls and I answer, and it's like, I'm like, Lucy, this is this amazing radio station from LA, and they say you've won an amazing prize. So I put Lucy on, and so Steve's doing his best radio voice, and Lucy's saying, I have to bark like a dog. And then she went for it. She was barking so loud, we had all the neighborhood dogs running. And I just remember how she cracked my son up.
Yes.
And the fact that on his birthdays, she didn't ever just give anybody a little thoughtless present. A lot of thought went into Lucy's presents. A lot of thought went into how Lucy wrapped her gifts.
Yes.
And Christian still has a box at 23 of things that Lucy gave him. Books that would open up and they would show you all the birds of the world. And,
how sweet.
I know.
Right.
And she just,
Right.
she extended grace and craziness to Christian.
Yeah.
He got to do
What a
things with
combo.
Lucy that I would say, there's no way you could do that. And Lucy'd be like, come on, buddy, we got this. I know that I think about Christian was 6 weeks old when I did my first Women of Faith conference.
Wow.
And I think he got to grow up in the presence of these women. And what a rich heritage to have Thelma and Patsy and Marilyn and Nicole and you, Sandi, and Lucy in his life. I mean, he grew up among great women. It's going to be hard for him to find a wife.
And he has a great mom.
He
has
does
a
have a
great
great
mom.
Fantastic mom.
I
sure
remember
does.
one backstage, Women of Faith, it was Halloween. We were all away from home. And Sheila comes running in with a bunch of candy. And she's like, Christian is a Power Ranger. And he is about to come in here and trick or treat. It's all we've got. Let's go for it. So she gives Lucy and all of us a bunch of candy. And in comes Christian trick or treating. And we're all giving him the candy. And I thought, that is a good mother. That is really a good mother.
It's also a great village.
It is a great
Also
village.
A great village. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that happened on stage. But the first question is, would somebody explain why you all started calling it the porch?
Marilyn.
Okay,
Yeah.
Marilyn.
Yeah.
I have no idea why that happened, but we had these steps up on a broad circular thing, and then we were sitting lower than that, and it just felt like that was the front porch, and we were on the back porch, and it seemed to stick. It's because it looked like that.
A little porch.
Nothing more exciting than that.
Now, I heard there's that very sweet and tender reason. I also heard, and it also kind of coincides with the snack bag, that all directs to Lucy, why the production team decided to move the speakers lower. So who wants to take that one?
You know, we took turns being flagged by Mary with
Our
the
dear Mary
words.
Graham, who's watching. Everybody just take a minute and
Oh,
wave
Mary.
at our precious Mary Graham.
Mary Graham, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But you could read her lips, wake Lucy up. And she would send the snack bag to keep her alert, give her a little sugar rush and open up her eyes. Later, we would find out she had a little sleep issue that required medication, and then she did fine. But there was some seasons in there where seating off the main porch was very necessary. And Barbara Johnson was with us from the beginning until she went to be with the Lord. And the two of them could simultaneously doze off. And it was getting harder for the audience not to notice. So that was a full-time job.
That is just fantastic.
And we had to toss candy all over the place, hoping it would land and wake them up. I mean, we were busy.
Start throwing it at them.
Yeah. It wasn't always for eating. It was often for,
Wake up,
missile launches.
honey,
wake up. I
Now,
remember
Nicole.
one night.
I
remember
go ahead, and
one
then
night I had
tell that other story.
the snack bag down on my end, and Lucy
Yes.
was falling asleep. So I'm trying to send it down there, again, trying not to be so conspicuous. So I grab one of the pieces inside and I hit Lucy, and she's like, "What?" And I said, "Do you want a snack?" She said, "No, I want a hamburger." Oh, I just held on to the snack bag. Yeah, that was
a hamburger.
Wasn't gonna do it.
That is so. I've heard tale of a story about an escalator, but this was before I had the privilege of joining the team, and so I don't know the story. But please tell the story and just in all of its.
I'll take it.
Nicole, go.
So Mary and Lucy were traveling, and they were in Paris, and they were leaving Charles de Gaulle Airport to come home. And Mary and Lucy, they said they thought they had like 14 carry-on bags between them. And Lucy gets onto the escalator, and Mary is right behind her, all the bags. And all of a sudden, Lucy falls. And maybe the person in front of her fell. And then, that's right. The person in front of her fell, and it was the domino effect. And Lucy was going up toward the top of the escalator. And the thing I remember the most is she said, "I'm realizing as I'm going toward the teeth of the escalator, it's either going to be my clothes or my hair." And I'm like, "Dear Lord, please take the hair. Take the hair. The world is not ready for this." And she would tell that story, and the audiences, we could not breathe. We would be laughing so hard. And one year in Cincinnati, we were just getting started, and we were all laughing so hard. Lucy was laughing so hard that she couldn't even get through to the end of the story. And, she speaks last, which was always a big deal to Lucy, because she would, have to hold on until the very end, and we could promise the audience that we saved the best for last.
Absolutely.
So here we are, all giddy after lunch, and Lucy is saying, "The world's not ready for this. Take the hair." And the audience can't stop laughing, and that was the message. That was like, I think that the gospel was just that was what we came for.
Come to Jesus now.
That's right.
I love that so much.
I forgot about that one, Nicole.
I know. I also heard that when she would get on the elevator after Friday nights, and the elevator would be packed, and she would, with the women who had just been there, and Lucy walks on, and they're like, "Oh, it's Lucy Swindoll." She would turn around so she's facing everyone and ask them all to sing with her. And so she would just, am I making that up, or is that?
No,
that's
right? Yeah.
No, the doxology.
The
doxology. And then she would say goodnight and make her exit out the
And as
elevator.
the song wasn't done, she would keep singing.
Yeah.
While the elevator doors closed and she went to her room. I love that so
Beautiful.
much. One of the things that is so very defining of our precious Lucy is she loved art. She loved music. She grew up in a very musical family. She would often talk about singing harmony with her family when it was nighttime and they had the windows open, and how the neighbors would say, "Why didn't you sing last night?" And she loved singing. And she and I would have a chance from time to time to sing
weren't those
together.
great moments?
And it was just the sweetest. And somebody asked if I would tell the story. In fact, I posted this recently on my Facebook. The first time that Dawn sang with me the prayer, Mary Graham was really taking a chance, and Shonda Pierce said, "You should have him sing the prayer." And I honestly don't know why Mary Graham said yes, because she thoroughly vets everything. But she said yes, and Luci is down like this in her seat.
Yeah.
Right? You can picture it. And she's got her eyes closed. Again, I'm going to quote Luci. She had her eyes closed, and when Mary announced it, she immediately went here and just kept saying over and over, "Don't suck, don't suck, don't suck." And then as we began to sing, you could see her slowly lift.
Yeah.
And then she'd get that Luci thing where she just start giggling. And then I think from then on, she decided that she would marry Dawn if it was possible.
And she could get rid of you. That would be that.
Yeah. And I don't think she really cared at all. She was willing to share, I think.
Yeah.
But she also was such a beautiful artist, and y'all have touched on the personal cards. They were not store-bought. They were Luci.
No.
With her heart. Patsy, talk a little bit about her art and what that meant to her.
Well, her home was a piece of art. She designed it, every square inch of it. She had a library that was the width of her home with a walkway that went into the other rooms. And it was a magnificent thing to see, because it was done to the nth degree. And she designed every cubby to hold beautiful glass pieces and sculptures that she had, and books she'd collected, and her journals were stacked up forever on the shelves, and her journals were pieces of art. I always thought they should be in a museum somewhere where people could see and be inspired by what she did and how she did it. She put maps in there of every country she visited. She would say to me, "You know, Patsy, the most fun of a trip is before you go." And I said, "How could that be?" She said, "Because you get to dream and plan, and you make all your maps, and you study the land and the people, and you go with an idea of what you're going to experience so you can fully enter into it." And it was just, everything she was saying was beyond me. My mind had never gone there. I'd never thought that wide or not that colorful. And her walls were lined with beautiful art, and even pieces that she had hand lettered that were just impeccable. And so her passion for it really sparked many of us to kind of move out of our safe areas and to try some things that we didn't even know we could do. And we may never have gotten to the place she was, but we got farther than we ever believed. And it colored pages inside our heart and our life that we will always be grateful for.
Good.
Very much. Nicole,
Beautifully said.
Do you have that journal?
I do. I have,
Just a small example of Luci.
Right. Traded journals back and forth. But she gave me this one, and of course, in typical Luci fashion, she wrote in it. Here we go. You can see, look.
And that handwriting.
That handwriting.
Oh,
and a little watercolor. right there. And she majored in lettering in
Yes.
college. I don't know that they even offer that as a major anymore. But her handwriting and her attention to detail, and Sheila, as you said, gifts, she would sometimes hand make this paper, or she would find paper, or she would take a paper bag and then decorate it with her, you know, just her style of anything.
Yeah.
So creative.
I'm so glad you have that. And, you know, I want to mention too, that with all the things that we've talked about that Luci is, she was a brilliant businesswoman. She was a fair and honest businesswoman and a very fierce leader in a major company as business, while she would sing at the Dallas Opera. Just amazing to me that this woman used so many more parts of her brain than any of us combined. Well, you guys, we are just about out of time. There's no set ending time, but I know I want to say to those who are just kind of tuning in tonight, we have had so much fun just thinking about tonight and being together and remembering, even it's just been on this massive text, that we have decided with each other, we want to do this more. And we really want you to join us in doing this more. We don't really know what all of that looks like right now, but we invite you, if you'd like to stay in touch. Here's what you can do. We want you to text the word PALS, P-A-L-S. You see that on your screen right now, to 833-579-0327. Again, we want you to just text the word PALS, 833-879-0327, because connection and community, oh, how we need it, but oh, how we need it in this season. So text that number and let us stay in touch with you. And when we do this again, we want you to be with us. All right, ladies, I've got some rapid fire questions here.
Ooh.
And I think this is such a great way to honor Luci. She loved family, she loved her friends, and she loved fun. Certainly the love of the Lord was above all of that. And so I'm going to give you a question, and then I'm just going to go around my Brady Brock screen here and call on you and just give me an answer. So one word that best describe Luci. Sheila?
Amazed. She lived amazed.
So good. Nicole?
Original.
Great word. Marilyn?
Irrepressible. Couldn't hold her back.
I love that.
She
Patsy?
held on and went on.
Mine is very similar, but much shorter because I didn't have the same education she did. But she was always eager. There was a light in her that just she was there for the moment. She was very much the moment.
Yeah. Thelma, how about you?
Magnificent.
Magnificent. Great word.
Yeah.
I think the word I would choose in addition to saying ditto is present.
Yeah.
Was always very present. All right.
Yeah.
Here's another one. I'll give you a minute, but Sheila, I am going to start with you again. So the funniest thing Luci said to you, I mean, in your mind, the funniest thing Luci said.
Okay, we're in a pastor's study. We are praying.
Yes.
And there's
I remember this.
statue of a bit of an eagle, but not the whole. It's like kind of unusual. And during prayer, I don't know whether Luci nodded off and then woke up, but she looked over and said loudly, "Somebody shot the hell out that eagle."
Love it. Nicole, how about
This
you?
was a famous pastor. It was his office, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
It didn't matter really to Luci. She was just herself wherever.
That's right.
How about you, Nicole? How about you?
That's a tough one. Oh my gosh. I love her. I think Marilyn or Patsy, was it her grandmother that she quotes, like, the day is wasted if we don't all fall over in a heap laughing.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh
That's
my
so
gosh.
good.
And that's, I mean, it was just our goal every time we got together and with Lucy. So there's so many funny things, but she loved the artist, Dale Chihuly.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yes.
one night we were late, we were talking about Dale Chihuly, and I said, do you know, I was very serious, if he's married? And then she said, Julie. And it took a minute for me to realize she was making that up, but it would have been Julie Chihuly. And it was so funny to us. We almost wet our pants. We were laughing so hard about
That is good.
Julie's wife, Julie.
That's good. How about you, Marilyn?
We were having dinner in a restaurant, and there was a guy singing and playing his guitar that was just awful. Just awful. Neither one of us wanted to be critical, but he took a minute out, put his guitar by the wall, and left. And I said, Lucy, I'll buy your meal if you'll go up there and start singing and playing that guitar. She said, Marilyn, I can't do that. I said, I'll buy your meal. She said, well, then I can do that. She got up, she started strumming that guitar and singing, and the people in the restaurant had been paying no attention to the guy. They put their fork down, leaned forward, and they were entranced. The guy came back, and here's Lucy just singing Summertime and strumming the guitar. Finally, she finished. They cheered, and then she put the guitar back, and he came back, and everybody went back to eating.
That is classic Lucy. Patsy, how about
Poor
you?
guy. It was the end of his career.
Well, this isn't exactly funny, but it is so endearing to me. She liked to give nicknames, like
Yes.
Bubba and Babe were her brothers. And she used to call me Patsy Watts all the time. Patsy Watts, come over here.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell her that was a name from my childhood that I didn't like, but through her lips, it redeemed that for me. I loved when she called me that. It was so warm and endearing of her. And another thing was, I gave books to all the girls on Toot and Puddle. It was a children's series on friendship. And she found two little figures, stuffed ones of Toot and Puddle, and brought them to me. And when she went on a trip, I gave her one, and she put it in different scenes and took pictures of it and sent me postcards. And one was a watercolor outside a castle window. I just treasure those.
Yeah.
So sweet.
That's a good one. Thelma,
Great one.
what about you?
She would say sometimes to me on the porch, you know, we're the only Christians on this team.
She did.
Yes, she
Where do
did.
you think she got that?
I love that. And
Oh, right.
and kind of in the same vein, what is the most meaningful thing Lucy has said? And I'm going to expand that, or done, that has just imprinted eternity on your heart. I'm going to start and give you all a minute to think. Lucy always had a way, as Thelma said, of opening her arms wide and saying, welcome home.
Yeah.
And what she did for our family by just her sheer cheerleading. I don't know of any other word. And then she was so musical. She cheerleaded the musicality. But I will say, Lucy, along with all of you porch ladies, every single one of you, helped us see the beauty in our broken and bruised family. And I just say thank you to Lucy, and I also say thank you to all of you. Sheila, I'm going to go with you again on this.
You know, I remember the year. Do you remember the year, girls, that Lucy had a mirror ball on stage?
Yeah.
And the
Yes,
light would hit the mirror ball.
right.
And I remember her saying to the audience as this mirror ball spun and the little lights went out all over the arena and touched people, encouraging them to go out and shine. And I think the thing that Lucy did that was amazing to me was she could take her message and her experience and her life, and it was almost like Jesus with the loaves and fish. She could break it down and feed the people and let them know, you know what, you can leave this place and you can shine. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Nikki, how about you go? I don't feel like I should call you Nikki because I feel like only Lucy could call you.
Right.
It's one of those things that Patsy was saying that's so powerful. And you know, nobody had ever called me Nikki. And honestly, again, just like you, Patsy, it wasn't my favorite, only because I'd never gone by it. But from her lips, it was so loving and caring. And if I had to say the most meaningful thing that will stay with me that she said was, "Hey, Nikki, want to go to Antarctica?" Because
And she meant it.
she meant it. And we went, you know, we had an incredible time and adventure. And I think, you know, it's true when I say I would not have gone on that trip by myself. There was, I wasn't just yearning to go to Antarctica, but I will never be the same from having gone on that trip with her and with Mary and experiencing what we experienced. And I think about it now, and I think about those icebergs, and, you know, Lucy was a force like so many of those, and just an amazing, original, unique woman made just in the beautiful image of God. And I think she just opened up so many possibilities of what it could look like to be a woman who loved God and all the things that she enjoyed.
Yeah.
And she was a
So
model
good.
and inspiration.
Marilyn.
I'm going to cry.
I know.
Lucy lost her words, and when she died, she didn't have any at all. But a month before she died, the last full sentence she said to me was, "I'm going to eat cake." And I said, "Baby, you're going to eat cake?" "I'm going to eat cake." And then that was the last full sentence. And when I got the word, I thought, she's eating cake. She is eating cake.
I love that, Marilyn. Patsy.
I was at Lucy's home one day. We were doing one of our devotional books that we had to write, and we were under a timeline. And I was saying I had a really good story, but I didn't want to put it in the collaboration. I wanted to use it in my next book. And she said, honey, when you've got something to give, don't hold on to it. God gave you for you to give it away. And when you give it away, you make space for him to give you something brand new.
Wow.
She said, all you have to do is step out your front door and say, Lord, show me. And he will give you all new stuff. So don't hang on to what he's given you, thinking that you've got to save it for over here. It'll make you greedy. Give it away. And you'll find that your heart will enlarge. And I've never forgotten that. I've needed that said to me again and again. Wherever you're at, give all that you've got. God has more. We think it's all we got, but it isn't all he's got.
That's right.
So good.
That's a good word, Patsy. That's a good word. Thelma, how about you, sweet Mama T?
I remember one day Lucy told me to come over to her house. And when I went over to her house, she showed me all the artifacts and the fine china and all of that. And then she said, oh, come on, girl, and let's eat something. Now, I loved her, but I didn't realize that she loved me enough
Oh,
to give me, to give me that private setting. There was nobody but Lucy and me.
Yeah.
And she told me about all of the things that she had gotten from her mom and blah, 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 and showed me many, many things and taught me many, many things that I will take to heaven to see her and to heaven with me. She pulled me into her house and said, look at this, see this. Yeah. And
what a beautiful picture too of, if we could get it, of God saying, come in, come in, sit at the table. Our time is kind of come to an end, and I want to, and have been asked to say a couple of things. I do want to remind you all, worldvision.org would be just a great way to remember Lucy. And I also want to remind you of Text Pals to that number that you saw on the screen. There's World. Oh, you know what? If this child was an envelope, Lucy would sponsor him.
Yeah.
Lucy would say, he's mine.
Look at that baby boy.
Oh, and don't forget to stay connected with us. We want you to text PALS to 833-579-0327. Now, one thing we haven't actually sat down and talked about tonight, and it's usually implied, but I want to say a couple of things. There is nothing that Lucy loved more than when people could find and follow Jesus. Nothing. Nothing. Marilyn would often give the gospel, talk about what it meant to be a follower of Jesus at the end of our conferences. And Lucy would rejoice at the cards that would come in. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest impacts that Lucy has had on all of our lives is, this doesn't sound, I don't mean this to sound disrespectful, but one of the criticisms I think that the conference would get, it's not about Jesus. And yet it was all about Jesus. And Lucy, because she knew who she was in Christ, would simply be herself, her amazing, her body, her insightful, her funny, her smart self. And so many women would say, I didn't know that I could be real and serve Jesus. And so I simply want to say, other way to honor Lucy is to find and to follow Jesus, as she is even tonight celebrating in the presence of her heavenly Father.
Whoa.
You guys, I know that we all know when we hear the next words I'm going to read, Lucy knew this poem by Sarah Teasdale by heart. And I have found myself, as I've become, as Patsy says, more seasoned in this life. You know, Sheila and I are older than Marilyn and Lucy when you guys started Women of Faith. I just find that a really interesting little fact.
That's not right. You were older?
We are older than when you guys were when you started.
Oh, I don't
Isn't
do
that
math
something?
well. Yeah.
But how many times, time and time again, we would hear Lucy say these words. And then I want to give each of you just an opportunity to say one last thing before we sign off. It's called Wisdom by Sarah Teasdale. When I have ceased to break my wings against the faultiness of things, and learned that compromises wait behind each hardly opened gate. When I have looked life in the eyes, grown calm and very coldly wise, life will have given me the truth. and taken in exchange my youth.
Yeah.
It's by Sarah Teasdale, but to us, it is everything, Luci. Sheila, would you like to have one last word?
I just know that if Luci was part of this conversation tonight, she would want you to know that you are loved by God just as you are. She would want to tell you, come as you are. Don't clean yourself up to come to God. You get to come as you are, and you are loved.
Mm.
Oh, good. Thelma, say something.
One of the greatest opportunities that I had was to bring my children up with Luci Swindoll. She loved them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I just can't think of a greater thing to say than she was an example for them, even though she might not have known it.
Beautiful.
Everything, yeah.
Beautiful.
And that's all I say because I don't want to cry.
I know. That's beautiful. How about you, Nicole? I'll call you.
I don't want to cry
Vicky
either, Thelma.
in honor.
We miss you. It's not the same without you. And you are a good friend, and an amazing picture of what life in God is all about, the fullness of life. And you tasted so much of it, and you were such an example to us. And the world's just a little different now because you're not here, but we hope you're there eating cake, looking at the most amazing art, and hearing Don sing all day long.
Marilyn, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that Luci moving to heaven has been especially tender for you. What do you want to say?
If you hadn't just said that, I would have been better. You know, our kids, my son Jeff and Beth, learned so much from Luci. And Luci taught my daughter Beth to swim in a straight line. Beth would run into the side of the swimming pool, which was not comfortable for her. And so Luci taught her how to swim in a straight line. And when I told Beth, when Luci passed, she said she went in a straight line. Thank you, Jesus.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Patsy.
Well, long before the term life coach became popular, she was living it out for all of us. And
So
she
true.
has left us a legacy of memories that bring us deep joy. And I can't imagine what better thing we could do for a friend or a family member. And if you could write anything that represented who she was, it would be hospitality for her gift of making you feel at home, and friendship, which she was devoted to.
Luci often was quoted from stage. She says that she always felt that the greatest characteristic of another person was kindness.
Yes.
That kindness will take you through anything. And we thank all of you who have tuned in tonight. It has been tender, it has been funny, it has been sweet. And for my Patsy and Thelma and Sheila and Nicole and Marilyn, who began something to model for the rest of us how we can be so real in Christ. We don't have to choose.
No.
We can be so real and who God made us to be. He is calling us to be who he made us to be.
Yes.
And so I don't know, I don't think it's worth us doing this. It could be a technical nightmare, but I just want to plant in all of our minds, if Lucy were in our green room just before we would take the stage and we would have prayer and someone said amen, and this alto voice would begin to sing, praise God from whom all blessings flow. She would just sing that over all of us. And so we say to you, sweet, sweet friend, take that motorcycle right off into the sunset. And it is not goodbye. It is, we will see you someday. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, ladies, for the privilege of getting to be with you this evening. May God go with you, before you and behind you, and walk beside you. Listen to this. Peace has a prince. Peace has a prince, and his name is Jesus.
Hallelujah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah.
I did turn this off.
So I think when you kind of scroll your screen, there should be a little red button that says the word leave.
Pat just came in. How do I shut that
Just
off?
hit that.
Let's see. That's your baby.
I love you all so much. Hi, Pat Winger.
We love you. What a great job.
Pat Winger.
Thank you.
You all feel free to go ahead and leave. I'm leaving this on so they can do some graphics on their end.
Love you all.
Precious.
Thank you, Sandy.
Love you, Sheila.
Precious.
Bye.
Bye.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow.
Thank you, Sandy.
Love you, Patsy.
Love you too.
Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And Lucy always wanted the amen. Amen.